ain't going back. Not gonna buy into all that. Hey, hey, ain't gonna hide, gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature is on my side. Got all of the loving.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the New Now. I'm delighted to have a first-time guest on, Ariane. I came across her lovely website after following Montauk Tom, and he made some amazing suggestions. I'll leave some links below so you can do some of the pre-research that I did. And after reading her articles on mind control, healing yourself, conscious studies, MK Ultra, roundabouts, especially cellular detox and nutrition from perhaps the most intelligent perspective I've come across, I had to reach out. I had to say hello, and Ariane has kindly, later in her day, decided that she would come on and talk with us. Ariane, hello.
Thank you so much for having me on, and it's great to be here in the space with you.
Well, maybe you can give our viewers a bit of a background as to your history, what you've done, and more interesting, perhaps, why you're sharing what you're sharing, and where you are right now.
Yes, so I always felt like I have resisted, the culture in which we are growing here. But each of us is kind of growing in a specific setting. It's usually a little bit of a setup as well, because it's usually very handled by the programming of our parents. And, you can have like a backdrop parents as well, which it's not going to make things easier for you and, the school system and all of that. So I think a lot of us have to go through years of tortures before we are kind of leaving the roof maybe of our parents, and then start to probably have experience. And then once I've seen some experiences kind of repeating, I knew it had to do with me more than that reality out there, right? Why am I attracting abusive relationship? Why do I feel like I'm hunted in some public places? What is it in my energy signature that does that? And how can people even read it, right? Because there is a lot of mind wiping here, and I think we have to relearn what discernment is about and kind of reawaken our dormant abilities. These abilities, they are used a lot in the nighttime maybe, but in our daytime, if we want to use it to our advantage, it's important to really work on maybe help a lot as well to kind of decalcify, and maybe movement as well has to do with that. So I think my 20s were a lot of like series of experiences of different kind. Of course, there was the new age was involved, right? Gurus, different kind of profile, handlers, some quite simple templates, and then it got more complicated as my consciousness was also rising, because maybe the old backdrop simple models wouldn't be enough to kind of keep me down. They had to send other propositions. So they sent a lot of spirited beings from when I was 26 to handle me. A lot were fractured. Some of them were kind of choosing to play a darker role here. So that's how we're gonna end up also in these engineer relationships, right? So at the end of my 20s, I kind of closed the door and started the real deep healing. And so here I was at the beginning of my 30s, and I must say I devote a lot of my time to writing, to taking notes of what insights that come when your programming kind of breaks down. You kind of have this insight, and if you don't write them down, they might be stolen away from you. So I have all these notes, and then I try to structure them and create something that is of universal knowledge for others, because even if the setting is different for some of us, there is a lot of commonality in the programming. We can see it's never going to be exactly the same, but you have the big programming like shame, guilt, you have the traps like the romantical traps, and so on. So at that time I started to create online content and create something out of it. And it's been also a guiding light for me, and very useful. And I think you also know what I'm talking about as a creator of online content.
Yeah, I mean, books, songs, poetry, paintings, it's all been, an exploration of my own inner self to put it out, as you say, and to kind of get some sort of coherence out of the cacophony that can go on inside your mind. And by putting it down and sharing with others, of course, you get what you give, I've noticed. So if you're trying to give clarity, coherence, healing, detox and such, it seems to come back to you. I mean, it's how, we got together. Maybe you can discuss a little more about the abilities that you meant. What do you mean by the abilities that you're looking to develop?
Well, we're so gaslit here that I'm not sure. I was sure I had abilities before a certain age, but now I know that I'm very psychic, and my way is more clairsentient, clear knowing. I have a little bit of clairvoyance, clairaudience sometimes, but these are my main ones. And I must say it's increasing, when fasting also gonna increase the amount of insight, and then it's also about trusting it, right? Not rejecting this intuition, but it's also tricky because we also have to deal with synthetic telepathy and like thought injection and V2K. So it's not always easy to know what's ours, what's not ours. But for me, it has to do with really recovering from being heavily gaslit, and then kind of stepping more into that, maybe that solar chakra energy center, and then believing more in it, and the more also with practice, right? Practicing a lot with others, with friends, with clients, with every day. With your pets, if you have pets, they are usually quite psychic, so you can practice also with other human beings. So I know that I've got a lot more abilities that are dormant. I know they are being used in the project, and I'm working on, and I'm happy with the speed that is going, and I see it evolving also in the next decade.
What project do you mean?
The nighttime projects. Well, there is a lot going on, when yesterday feel like a long time ago already, and you feel like you have lived many different lives. You have been somewhere, maybe in lives where you have like totally different lives there. I've been writing up my dreams for years now. And of course, there are lots of cover dreams. They are usually handled. You can have a lot of interference. I've got a lot of seeded dreams as well. That's how I got myself in some complicated and engineered things in my life. Like you are in Japan, but when I was 26, I was, they were like, the controllers were seeding, or maybe it's the matrix computer programs were seeding my dreams with traveling. And I always loved Japan so much. I grew up with mangas, but it was cheaper to fly to Bangkok, and that's how I ended up in a journey where I met a lot of handlers on my path. All of my travels were really, really handled. Going from handlers to handlers because of what? Because of my own programming, right? Because of different personalities and so on. So the dream time is really fascinating. That's something that I want to explore more and also teach about because it's fascinating. And of course, I try to keep as much as I can from my memory, but there is a lot of memory wiping also about the dream time, and a lot of cover and false dreams. So it's really hard to say. All I can say sometimes is the feeling I have, the time-wise, you can, time, it can feel a little bit strange, or sometimes these dreams that are made to make you upset maybe, or to generate certain feelings. So I think all of that is really fascinating for us to really study and pay more attention to, because I think it's important. And I think they also are up leveling the level of technology to handle the astral time, because 10 years ago, I was able to remember 3 different dreams. And now not anymore, not 3 dreams in a row. But I usually remember 1 at least. There was time where, when they were deploying the operation, like the psychological operation, where it was more difficult to remember dream time. What about you? What are your observation or feeling, sensing about dream time?
Well, it's very interesting you should bring that up. I had a crazy, I feel like I didn't sleep at all last night, because it was one of the craziest nights for having a lifetime dream in an evening. Traveling, usually stressful, usually trying to get somewhere that I'm having trouble getting to, driving a car that was broken with a hole in the side. Lots of it's coming back to me right now. And it's not the first time I've had this dream with this car or had this vision. Sometimes when I have the dreams, like I had last night, there seems to be, you don't remember it during the day, but now that I'm looking back, a recurring mountainscape or a recurring huge apartment or a recurring valley that goes on forever and higher than you could see, so to speak. And always it seems trying to get back to something that I never quite get back to, and things getting in the way, right? Whether I was looking, I think maybe for my mother who went on a trip last night and trying to find her, something of that nature, and not being able to get there and saying we're going to meet somewhere, and then forgetting in my dream to be specific about where we're going to meet. And so I was worried the entire time about, is she coming back? Am I going there? Are we going to get there? And again, having an accident in the car that I was driving with. And it's very clear my dream last night, this particular time. And of course, being relieved in some ways when I woke up going, I'm not really looking for my mother. The car's not really broken and I'm okay. Everything is fantastic now. But along the lines of what you've said, is the more conscious I've become in my life, the more clear I've become in my health, the less indulgences I do, right? I don't eat sugar. I don't drink. I don't, those sorts of things, crazy oils, processed foods, all that garbage, I don't do any of that as much as I possibly can. So the more I've done that and detoxed myself, the more clear my dreams have become and the more I do remember them. And I have had the battles you've had as well until recently, with the monsters in my dreams trying to hijack my rest, take me to bad places and wake up more exhausted than when I went to bed. And so I'm finding now to kind of bring them together. That's what I found with my dream time. I'm working in taking whatever lessons I learn in my dreams and putting them into play in my day, because I figure it's the same for me. Like I'm one conscious being, right? 24 hours, or if there's no time, as you say, especially when you're dreaming, you can tell there's no time. So I'm kind of using that to melt the time in my so-called waking hours, allowing the other side to join me by curtailing my thoughts. I've spent, decades destroying my belief system on purpose, or getting rid of it, we'll say in a polite way. I'm more of a destructive young man, but I know that's not always helpful. So it's more like gently putting it down, we'll say, although it hasn't always been that way. It's been more of a destructive process for me, and allowing that part, which I found does come during the day more now that I'm letting it, whether it's a crow or a flower or the wind or a tree, mostly not from people. And if it is from people, I'm wondering if they are people. I'm not sure. Like you, I know there's all kinds of interesting personages, and whether they're handlers or human or non-human or alien or my imagination, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm beyond arguing those points with people now, because I realize if I trust my feelings in an experience, it doesn't really matter what's happening on the other side. It's more important what's happening with me, right? Because it is me that's making my dream. I know that. So to take a long story short, my dreams have been great. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the dream time. And yeah, it's very interesting to explore.
So, you mentioned gaslighting and handlers. I kind of know what you mean, but maybe you can explain a little more, about the experiences you had in your 20s, what you mean by, gaslighting and handlers, in the fact I'm guessing they look like regular people at the time, humans, so to speak, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. So how would you differentiate that from what most people would say is just normal relationships, let's call it.
Yeah, well, so the models of handlers, they are kind of becoming more intricate as I'm deprogramming, right? So at first I had like a backdrop sim handler giving workshop about self-development, for example. At the time, that was enough to kind of keep me busy with their projects instead of me focusing on what I can do, right? Because that's what a handler does. They are there to distract you mainly, to restrict you, to control, to have an influence, to upset you sometimes. And you have like all different kinds, right? You have like the simulated beings who can be handlers. They you have like your regular harasser as well. The gang-stalking programs are mainly led by backdrops. Now you can also be harassed and traumatized by spirited beings, but and then you also add like you can also be handled by another spirited beings, and it does happen to one degree or another in our relationship because of programming. But I think it becomes a problem when it's like when it's the main aspect of the relationship that is there to restrict, because we do gaslight each other due to a lack of discernment, because usually we really believe our handlers are different than they are, so we cannot see them as they are. So it happened a lot of time that I recommended the work of my handler, and I had different handlers. I also had partners who were handlers, and I had public figures who also were used as handlers, and sometimes they were also used to send someone in my geographical reality, with the networks, and someone who could really access my software and influence. That's when I really had the impression to be reprogrammed, especially during the nighttime, and waking up really zombified and having really to kind of stop the agreement that I had signed energetically due to everything that is installed in me. So this is a huge topic. And then, there are many therapists, many guru, and I see it also with my friend. They can gaslight you about what your reality is about. It can be a small derailment or a bigger, right? And usually you are a highest caliber than your handlers. That's why they are sent to handle you, right? Because somehow maybe the direction you're going is a little bit of a threat for here, the reality we are in. So it's going to increase as well as the level of gang-stalking is usually increasing. Usually at the beginning it's covert, right? They try to hide it, and you're being gaslit, so you're never sure why. But then, when you step up maybe on the public scene, it gets more overt, and you can have like really overt stalker people kind of following you, like really with that AI stare. And at that stage, they want you to know, because that has an impact on your mind as well. It happened to me that I was impressed or feeling unsafe because it was just around me, or having people at your door. It's not fun, right? And it's all meant to discourage you and distract you. And if you postpone your project for a week, that's one. That's a week you're not gonna get back. So.
For sure. I mean, how did you this is all very interesting, and I've had similar experiences in my ways, in varying ways. How did you begin to see through, let's say, all of this, we'll call it nonsense, and what did you do that was different, let's say, from a regular person that would get distracted for their life or lost or go into bad relationships and stay there forever? So what started to bring you out of all this and notice what you just mentioned you started to notice?
Well, I had my project in mind, my website, I think for 2 years before I was able to sit and create it, built it on WordPress, and at the time I was in a very handled relationship, and I think it's the suffering I kind of had enough of that level of the game, right? It's not fun to suffer so much and to be psychically tortured. And so I did close the door. And from there, I really started to hold on to my project, because I think we have, all the reels have something to express in many different ways. You know, it's creative because it's connected to like infinite creation. It's connected to source. So we are very surprising in what we can manifest and how we're going to manifest this. And it's never going to be the same. There is a signature to us, and that signature is kind of evolving as well. So for me, it was knowing, you know, like I wanted to build something useful. That's something that really helps me in my reality, is to, and I go back to my own work, you know, because, you know, we are memory wiped. So I forget also some of the things that I have created. So it's also good to come back to it and come back to material that is helpful over and over again, because every time we get new layers, because we're deepening our own connection to ourselves, and, you know, we're not the same person anymore. So my project is really something that helps me to not be too distracted, though we are always there. I mean, there are hundreds of ways to be distracted here. So and sometimes no distraction can be also unbearable, you know. So it's and what about you? Because we were talking about the setting around you in Japan, and how the collective can also play this like containment system, and I see it playing. I mean, we've been seeing it play the last years.
Well, for me, it's helped. I have to say, at first I was getting angry. First I was getting sad. At first I was trying to maybe change people. But then I went back to my original roots of evolution, let's say, and I started to recapitulate the feelings I had. We touched base on this a little bit before I got on. When I was a little boy, when I was hanging out with relatives while I was in school, I was always getting in trouble. You know, I can still remember in grade 5, the teacher calling my parents into class to tell them to ask him to stop looking at me that way, because she didn't like me talking to a friend and made me set up friends. So I would just kind of look at her like she was, you know, like I didn't like her, or she was, you know, foolish. You know, I won't put in. So, you know, so I started to understand now that perhaps people were always masked, right? People were always living behind an illusionary, you know, pretending to be religious and nice and not. I mean, they call it in Japan having inside face and outside face. When I first came here, and I told my wife, it's so nice, everyone's so polite, everyone's so kind. You know, it's less and less and less now. It's like almost gone away. I've had some very rude experiences, which have shocked me in the last 6 months, that I never had in the previous 10 years of visiting Japan. Being bumped into, jostled out of the way, things like that, which would have been unheard of a couple of years ago. And my wife said, no, don't get fooled, you know, because she was raised in a small village here with, you know, the intricacies, let's say, of social niceties that weren't authentic. Let's put it that way. And, you know, so I'm starting to see the truth in what was shared with me. And what that allowed me to do, getting back to the work you said, is I wanted to move to Japan at one point because I thought everyone was nice, right? Everyone was polite and everyone was sweet. And that was the kind of community I think we would all, people with generous hearts and loving souls, would enjoy living in. And I found, in a good way, which rudely awakened me at the time, that the community I'm looking to live in can only be found on the inside. There's no outside source that's going to bring that to me. You know, there's no country you can go to. There's no home you can move to. There's no car you can buy. There's no relationship you can look for. You know, none of that comes from the outside. So it allowed me to realize 100% I have to look in for all of my answers. And if there was something I didn't like, it was kind of like you, it reflected to my outside. So I've spent the last, you know, year or two on purpose changing my inner landscape, and it's working out. You know, I'm getting happier, healthier, smiling more, you know, laughing more. People are getting, you know, nobody's getting any better here. They're still pretty crazy. Everyone's still wearing masks here and everyone's still nutty. But I just don't care anymore. Right. I'm going, well, you know, I'm not looking for validation. Let's say that's part of, I guess I wanted to say the programming you talked about, you know, the guilt, the shame. I think not being good enough is part of it. Feeling you're not good enough. So you need someone on the outside to tell you you're okay. And that's what leads you into those bad relationships, like you had mentioned, or the bad, whatever, jobs, vocations, friendships. And I've got quotes in the air because they weren't really any of those things. And by realizing I have to figure this all out for myself, 100%, so that's changed my life such that I get to meet people like you. I mean, we've only chatted recently, only about maybe a month or two ago, we started emailing. So I'm finding by changing my inner landscape to someone who is doing the kind of work you've already done, like, how did we meet? I have no idea, right? It's like my dream said, I need to meet more people that are doing this sort of intelligent work. Because I'm a man, I met mostly men, to be honest, along the way. But I knew there were some intelligent women in there, from a feminine perspective, doing similar travels, journeys, dream time, etc. And then here we are talking. So how did that happen? Couldn't tell you, other than I've been asking to get some intelligent feedback from other intelligent beings that have been through similar challenges, because it's helpful, because there is a community out there. That's one thing I want to share with everyone out there. If you don't cry, complain, blame, shame, guilt, and you start to work on yourself first, the rest generally will look after itself, I've found. So that's my long to say my short. And for me, it's been a huge plus in the challenges have helped me to grow stronger so that I can make my dream the way I've always, since I've been 4 years old, maybe before that, knew it could be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true that with different cultures, at first you tend to see the positive aspects of them, and then when you stay longer, you also start to. It's like in any new relationship as well. But I had the same kind of impression when I travel in Southeast Asia. And and when you were talking, I think, yes, there are still many things that maybe I don't like yet in my reality, and that's what I need to be working on, right? To change inside, as you were saying so very sharply. Yeah.
And you mentioned, or I've mentioned, I've seen on your website, we haven't talked about it yet, cellular detox, nutrition, food. When did this come in? Because I know it's super important, like what you put in, especially if you're using your intuition, which is in your guts, in my opinion. So what you put in there is very important if you're going to use it as a second brain, which I know it is, or, my experiences showed me. So how did you begin that journey on understanding what you put inside is as important, physically speaking, as, let's say, mentally and spiritually speaking?
It was just before I was able to sit and create my website, because food is such a distraction and it occupies so much of your time. Then it's only when I start to really go towards a lighter that I had a little bit more hours maybe, and I had a bit more structure. Also, if you integrate a bit of intermittent fasting and things like that, you structure your day a little bit differently, and usually you can be more productive. So it was like in 2018, and I mean my genetic, we all have our genetic. It's good to know what are our weaknesses, what are our strengths, and for me, I was reaching a level of acidity that was, my teeth were starting to be threatened. So I guess it was enough of a alarm bell, and I was scared enough for my teeth. And I think here it functions a lot like this. Like sometimes we have to be scared for, to maybe be brave enough to face food addiction, because in the end that's what it is. And I've noticed that food addiction doesn't really go away. It kind of transforms, but it's always kind of ready in the background to kind of surprise you a little more. So but I kind of made a request internally, and there I bumped into the mucus-free teachings, and for me they have been bringing a lot of relief. I've seen stuff exiting. I had to do a lot of ear candles when I was doing long fast, which maybe from 2020 it has become maybe a little bit harder to do these long fasts, because the context is generally more triggering and more intense. But braving these fears around not using food as a distraction, as a numbing agent, right? Before that, I had touched a little bit in the plant medicine scene, with Cambell and ayahuasca, which are said to be like purging plants as well. But I never had a lot of effective detox. So for me, it was really necessary to start, not create more obstruction than you create every day, right? And to ideally to release a little bit of the old, and on the way, something that was really important for me, and it is for everyone, is to get the kidney to filter again, right? To get, because they're gonna extract a little bit of that acidity. So it's very helpful. And from that moment, I had a skin problem. It stopped. I had many things that kind of balance. Not saying that my health is perfect, because it's a balance, to find every day. Usually, if you're real here, you are targeted with EMF, and then it's how strong you're gonna be, how are you gonna protect your space, and all of that. But I always was interested in food since I'm 18. I changed my food habits, because I was intolerant of a lot of things like gluten and stuff like that. And so I think because it's a long journey, it helps also to go, and we don't all have the same genetics. So it's going to be like, which step is necessary for me? What can I do? How can I up-level my game, right? If you do 1 or 2 more hours of intermittent fasting, it's already good. And then you get used to it. So there are lots of things. And then I got passionate, you have lots of methods that are not related to food, like you can detox with food baths, with your candles, you can exercises. That's something I'm working on more now, because I know that I have chronic lymph congestion, and I mean, everybody's lymph's going to be sluggish a little bit. So we all need to kind of move, and sometimes moving is hard because we feel the density of a body. So it's not something that is something we can build on, I think.
For sure. I mean, I got lucky when I came to Japan. The summers were hot, so I started sweating quite a bit, which helped a lot. I noticed I didn't realize how much I missed sweating till I lived in a country where you sweat for months on end and go, wow, this feels good. And or a lot of the fatty meats, because I'm not strictly a vegetarian, but I'm an O-blood, so I found that raw fish and the fatty meats and the kind of even citrus you get in Japan that you don't find anywhere else, because even organic in Canada, where I'm from, gets radiated on the way in. So if you're having citrus, it's coming from outside the country. So it's all radiated, all the stuff from so-called California or Mexico at the time. I didn't realize the difference until I started living in a country where you could get fresh citrus, fish, meat from inside the country, and very close to the difference it made. Even my teeth, as you mentioned, as soon as I started eating more organ meats and fatty fish, I haven't had problems in years. And I used to have to go to the dentist every couple of months with something. So I have a feeling that I remember reading somewhere that you may be missing micronutrients and minerals to help your own teeth grow back. So that, I got, and more fermented foods, of course, that's very much a structure of the diet here in Japan, whether it's pickles or miso or shoyu, which soy sauce, or even my own kimchi that I make now and things like that. It's just the kind of country where it's very easy to find the ingredients, because it's culturally something that's been around forever. And, by changing my diet, eating fermented foods every day, which I pretty much do now as well, huge difference in my gut, which is for my intuition, which is for my dreaming, which is for, I don't have stresses anymore either. I used to have like tons of stress all the time. I've kept my wisdom teeth too, which I've heard is very important as a meridian for your energy attached to your teeth. There must be a reason, although I haven't done the studies yet, where they insist everyone gets their wisdom teeth out because it's medically required. And I have a feeling it's to take away your ability to deal with stress when they pull them, because I don't think the creator, if you believe in a creator, made us wrong whatsoever. I think if we have something, we're supposed to have them, period. The rest, I wouldn't trust anybody that tells you they should take something out of your body because a doctor said so. That's just crazy talk, in my opinion. But let me turn this back in that, like, what is your work? Do you work with patients and clients? I mean, people are going to ask that, like, do you do the kind of, I guess, advice sort of for, is it just health related, or do you do everything you've talked about in relation to this conversation we've had so far, as far as getting you customers, clients, you know, that sort of thing for your services?
Yeah, I do work with people individually now on all level, like physical, spiritual, emotional, psychological. And for a year and a half now, I work also with the Energy Remaster app, which is a biofeedback app. And you know, it comes with different panels that are already written, that are amazing. It's great for shadow work as well. It's great to know, you know, what frequencies the body is missing. It helps also to know, you know, food wise, like what you are allergic to, or what floral remedy can be helpful right now. And then I'm programming also a part of it. So you know, for the simulation aspect, for example, or you can also program it with the remedies you have in your own cupboards. So, you know, I know what kind of patch maybe I need today, and it's going to be different every day. So I've been really learning to work with other beings who are interested in deprogramming. And I also propose a different remote service. And I do also propose some coaching on food. I have some courses also now that are in their evergreen version. So what I try to do in my courses is also a training in discernment, right? So I go through many different examples of signatures. So we usually is beings I have cross pathways, right? So I have an idea about, you know, what is their frequency signature and what role did they play for me, and then, you know, it's like what can others learn from that, because it's going to be a little bit different in their reality, but there's going to be a lot of commonality. And usually when I share, it's also to kind of trigger like insights in the mind of others, so they can know for their own reality, they can understand. Because it's very, you know, we could write a book about each being here. So it's going to be fascinating to really study the settings and the setups, and how are we being distracted, and so on. And to kind of come back about the tooth, I think for me, you know, I got my they got my wisdom teeth out, and I think they put also implants, because it took me 1 week to kind of heal. And I was not like a slow healer, but it got infected. It was messy, and I was not fully unconscious. I was partially conscious, but of course I wasn't seeing what they are doing. And with dentistry, you know, there is a lot of problem with things they put in our mouth, and it's a very good location, you know. What an operation is really awesome, because they can put something in and then kind of close it, and you know, it's going to be very, very hard to take it out, or to even know that it's there.
What did you do in relation to that? What have you done?
I mean, it's only recently that I've kind of breakthrough about that, probably the last 2 years. And, you know, we have implants. What can you really do about it, except if you meet like a spirited surgeon? Maybe I would consider, but in the meanwhile, you know, it's you know, we have to live with some of these things. You know, it's like the gang-stalking and the repression and the matrix computer not working in your favor. It's kind of part of the reality. And then who can I still be despite all of that, you know?
Yeah, I found the same thing. Doesn't matter. You know, everyone says I can't do because 1 challenge, 2 challenges, 4 challenges, 8 challenges. And the bottom line is, it doesn't really matter. If you want to be free, you have to figure out whatever your challenges are and get over them. I would say because you have no choice in that. If you have, let's say, had an implant, or whether it's, you know, physical, spiritual, psychological, or you've had bad food, you've had bad parents, you know, fill in the blanks. We've all had those challenges. It doesn't really matter because you are who you are now, and now you know where you need to go. And so your challenges are what's required, I guess, to get there. So I'm happy that there's someone doing that kind of work, and people can talk to Ariana, and maybe she can assist, it seems, in ways that other people may not be able to get over some of the, we'll call them esoteric challenges that I found to be very real.
Yes, definitely. It helps to discuss it together, and also, to be validated. Because when you've been heavily gaslit, sometimes all you have to do is kind of trust more of yourself, because a lot of fire creation being, they know all of that, but do they give it credit? And you have to give it more and more credit to your inner reality and to all your experiences. So because a lot of us, we feel there is so much more under the surface life, right? Under the surface level, under the cover life, that I call it, is like the daytime reality. But underneath, you have like all these processes, how you feel, how you've been triggered, in what frequency. Usually it's low frequency, all the shame, guilt, and all of that. It's a harvesting system. It's well made. So I find it very useful to process the energy together, to be validated, and to learn, and also to uncord from different forces, energy, and groups. And we're not always aware we are associating with them. We're not always aware we are signing contracts. The last time that I've fallen sick, the last 3 years, it was because of agreement, energetic agreement that I have signed. And it has become way more clear for me, what is disease, right? It's going out of balance. And I've been also reflecting how I've been sick in the past. And it's very often related to some relationship, some energy exchange, for sure.
How did you unsign those agreements?
Well, you learn from your mistakes as well. You live and you learn, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that one ever again. In these cases, I was, I had my little fever, and I kind of processed. And then, I kind of feedback with myself what was going on with these people and these groups. These beings were only like a cover for some dark groups to kind of hoard and harvest and all of that. So I learned from understanding, what was going on, and where did I place the agreement, and how can I do better, and where did I submit my energy, how was I being accessed, because it has to do also with accessing your own software, your own programming. And if you're real here, you have a lot of different fragments and personalities to kind of reintegrate together. And sometimes they are being accessed. That's where you're going to find yourself more people pleasing than you would like, right? And that's something to really observe, and then to integrate and to work on after. And to also identify when it's showing up, every time it's showing up, even when it's subtle, because sometimes it's more subtle, and programming, tracing it back where triggers lead you, right? It leads to different like areas in your mind. Different programming might be activated from a simple trigger, might trigger you in so different directions. So really staying present with all of that, and once you understand, I think, and once you're aware, it helps a lot to navigate all of that.
For sure. I think you've hit the nail on the head, and that you've taken full responsibility for what the challenges are, worked your way backwards and found what a lot of people, I find, are missing, in my opinion, if they want to heal, is to decide to take full responsibility for the challenges, even if they were caused from an outside source. Because once you do, as you just mentioned, in many ways, you work your way back and you watch yourself, you can unsign those contracts, but it has to be on a conscious level, and it never ends, because you never know when those challenges are going to try and sneak in again.
Yes, and any wounding is taking advantage of. And I don't think we're going to resolve all the wounding in this lifetime, because there is a lot. There is past life wounding. There is so there is so much. We're going to be busy, and with the numbing, I mean, the triggers are just getting. I feel them more than I used. My body used to be so numb that I wouldn't really feel. I didn't even know what was a trigger in the past. You have to learn. And then there are many different kind of triggers. Some will be more in your heart center. Some will be more shutting down your solar energy center, your throat. You have like so many different things. So really, I don't think the triggers are ever going to stop. Plus, the collective reality also can bring a lot of different triggers by triggering the simulated being to behave a certain way. So you would have to be like fully integrated, fully healed, not to have any trigger, So it's like really about learning to navigate them. Maybe, there is a lot of food compulsion when we get triggered, for example. It's like a reflex. If you put something in your mouth, it's kind of going to numb it with the density of the food, and we feel it less. So sometimes maybe it's the choice that I'm going to make right now, but maybe later I can still process it. Or there are many different ways of distracting ourselves, like YouTube and social media is another one. There are so many different ways.
Of course. Well, Ariana, I think perhaps we've come to a lovely conclusion, such as we can, with the topic that could take a lifetime of explorations. Perhaps we can do further chats on detox and food, and alkalining yourself as opposed to acidifying yourself, and some of the other, disease and dream time. I think we've come across maybe half a dozen other topics that could be discussed in depth, that would be helpful for people to understand a little better in relation to how you understood them. Because, I found it's probably different for everyone. All they can do from watching someone is perhaps take something that feels good for them in relation to what someone else has done, and see if they put it into play in their life, it works. And if not, keep those explorations open, because I strongly feel everyone can heal everything if they decide to, even if it takes, 100 lifetimes.
Yes. And it's like everyone has to find what's the next step for them, and it's going to be different so it's really like, that's how we are navigating our everyday. We're in different matrices. So we do all these things, it's very material sometimes. You climb up the stairs, you go down, you go to the basement, or you do these things to up level your reality as well. Maybe you want to filter your water or things like that, right? It takes like material action, and it's going to be different. It's going to look different for everyone, and there is always a way to really up level, rise in frequency, discover new things, create new association. So thank you so much for having me on, and for organizing, mind expanding, mind triggering conversation. It's one, I think it's one of the best things we can do.
Well, you are very welcome. I would be delighted to have more chats with you as the timing can work out for us. I found it enlightening myself and refreshing to talk to a conscious being working their way towards authentic healing, I'll call it. And, just being real, to be honest, being what they call human, to me, is just figuring out where you've got pain, healing that, and it allows you to become a more loving being, which in my opinion is what this world completely needs. More loving, authentic, discerning, as you said, humans that realize they've had to go through their own challenges to get to where they are. Ariana, is there anything you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Well, I've got a lot of content on my website. I have some articles on deprogramming, on external authority, for example, which is one topic that, is really useful to work on, because all their operation is also based on that. Plus, there are many operations on a micro level that are also, focus on that, us giving our authority to other beings outside of ourselves, as you were mentioning. So there is a lot of content there with different themes, engineer relationships, also a lot about else. So that's if people want to find me also on Instagram and on Facebook, I'm there, and I have also some courses available, and I'm available for one-on-one. If people want to reach me out, they can find a form on my website and contact me. And I invite everyone also to give feedback or to maybe leave questions. Questions can be food for thought, and then we can also rebound, and it can sometimes positively trigger some new insights to come.
I would be delighted. I will share anything anybody leaves below with Ariane, and I'm also happy for questions and suggestions. Please like and subscribe. I'll get this up as fast as I can. Ariane, thank you so much for joining us. I'm delighted to have you here today. And if anyone has any questions, please leave them below. And I'm delighted to have you back. I will also leave Ariane's links, her website, bio, all kinds of lovely things. And yes, please check out her articles. I found them enlightening, and I'm hoping she'll share more with us as we move forward.
I'd be super happy to do so and to come back.
Me lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Freedom first is what I say.